On July 23rd, 2024, a massive explosion rocked Yellowstone National Park, and I was there. It seemed like a typical day on a typical trip to Yellowstone, but like the flood of 2022, which I witnessed firsthand, Yellowstone had yet another surprise in store. I had spent the better part of a week cycling the park's roadways, marveling at the park's wildlife, and enjoying the park's treasured thermal features. I had just wrapped an amazing close encounter with one of the park's wolves, and had made my way in the direction of Old Faithful. But while packing up my gear, all hell broke loose. Out of nowhere, the park's emergency response teams burst to life, and the stillness of the park was consumed by blaring sirens in every direction. And like the flood of 2022, initially there was a lot of confusion and many of us didn't know what was going on. I've been exploring Yellowstone since I was a little kid, and I have never experienced a cacophony the likes of what happened shortly after 10:19 a.m. on July 23rd. But slowly, the details became more clear. The park had experienced a phenomenon known as a hydrothermal explosion at Biscuit Basin near Old Faithful, where a thermal feature known as Black Diamond Pool had blown its top. Little did we know, below our feet, one of the world's largest supervolcanoes was building highly localized pressure. A network of massive subterranean caverns and thermal pools housing water at or near boiling point had been disrupted. And as boiling water transitions from liquid to vapor, it expands, sometimes violently. Most of the time, the pressure is released gradually through the park's fumaroles, pools, and geysers. But if that transition happens too quickly, or an obstruction alters the underground hydrothermal passages, the rapid transition from liquid to vapor can overwhelm the existing caverns and vents and produce violent explosions, not dissimilar to a water heater explosion, but on a much larger scale. Those nearest the site of the explosion were incredibly lucky, not only because they got to witness such an incredible event, but because as hydrothermal explosions go, this one was pretty tame. Hydrothermal explosions have been known to send water, steam, rocks, and debris more than a mile into the air. Just for reference, if such an explosion were to occur on the floor of the Grand Canyon, debris from the explosion could be flung from the canyon floor all the way to the rim. This is Mary Bay on Yellowstone Lake, at more than 1.5 miles in diameter. This is the largest known crater left by a hydrothermal explosion. And evidence of similar explosions can be found throughout Yellowstone National Park. You can't visit Grand Prismatic Spring, one of the park's most popular features, without passing Excelsior Spring, an absolutely stunning, superheated emerald pool occupying the crater left by the explosion of Excelsior Geyser in the 1880s. And just days before the explosion at Biscuit Basin, I encountered a grizzly bear near Indian Pond, a seemingly tranquil body of water near Yellowstone Lake, which is in fact a massive crater carved by a hydrothermal explosion. And Biscuit Basin, the site of this most recent event, last experienced a hydrothermal explosion in 2009. There is a real temptation when visiting Yellowstone to look at this magnificent landscape as complete or stagnant, but nothing could be further from the truth. Yellowstone is a dynamic and living wonderland that continues to change. As John Muir rightly said, one learns that the world, though made, is still being made, that this is still the morning of creation. The forces that created Yellowstone aren't just alive, they are in constant motion, and sometimes they make their presence known in spectacular and terrifying fashion. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured in this most recent hydrothermal event. And the Park Service is reporting that there are no perceivable changes in the behavior of the Yellowstone supervolcano, and that this most recent explosion likely resulted from a change in the area's, quote, underground plumbing, which trapped rapidly expanding steam and gases. Rocks the size of grapefruit were thrown hundreds of feet into the air, and there remains the possibility of subsequent explosions over the next few months. But according to the U.S. Geological Survey, seismicity, ground deformation, and gas and thermal emissions remain at their normal background levels, and there were no detectable precursors to this event. And in a way, this recent explosion demonstrates the true character of the park. The heart of Yellowstone National Park is a 45-mile wide caldera, the colossal crater left by the last major Yellowstone eruption. And while it's sometimes terrifying to contemplate the forces at work below the surface, Yellowstone's priceless landscape, specifically the thermal features, gave birth to the national park idea, which has led to the preservation of natural treasures across the globe. To this day, Yellowstone remains one of the most treasured landscapes on Earth. For more news updates and travel information regarding Yellowstone National Park, including my forthcoming wildlife viewing guide, make sure to stay tuned to At Home in Wild Spaces.